Hello, Good Hope. We come back together again as we are addressing questions that come our way. The question today comes from some of our folks that are going off into college, as their first year in college, and asking about preparing for things like philosophy or sociology and how do we interact with that. So it's a very good question. So what I did is I looked at various syllabi that are out there in various schools and kind of compared that and did some studying there. And I want to point out that the syllabus is not going to come out and say these things, but I want you to approach this when you do sit in class, that these are going to be some of the things that are going to come out of that syllabus. One of those is going to be secular humanism, where humanity is at the top. That is, the highest good is being a human. Scientific naturalism, where depending on who you talk to, that all of existence is matter, and then matter and energy. And then we'd see existentialism, where it's trying to explain where we came from, what we're doing here, and where we go when we die. And then something that we need to be paying attention of is called historical critical biblical scholarship, where they would look at the Bible simply as a historical document, void of anything to do with God or angels or the supernatural. Now again, the syllabus isn't going to say that, but it's going to lead into that. Now with that said, years ago I knew a person that was taking a sociology class in college, freshman sociology class, but the same professor was the philosophy professor. So when the professor was teaching the sociology class, about 30 minutes into the class, the professor said that 10,000 years ago they discovered that God was a woman. And he threw that out there, and then he quickly moved on. A college freshman isn't going to know to challenge that. But what happened was the college professor did the sociology class based on that premise that he could not substantiate. So it's okay to be in these classes, because we do need to understand the argument of the world. If we're going to share Christ with the world, we need to know where they're coming from, as long as we understand it. So when you go to Philosophy 101 or Sociology 101, don't lose touch with this. As you're going through the class, understand that you have a biblical worldview that the class may challenge. And I would even say this: if you come across things in philosophy that you don't understand, please email me, or myself, or Pastor Winfield, or Pastor David. We'd love to help you walk through that. So what are some of the things that they're going to bring out derived from the syllabus? They're going to look at evolutionary naturalism, which means that what we have today evolved from something that they can't fully describe, but that evolution is the outworking of natural progression of matter and energy. Well, that doesn't take into account the soul, the spirit, our intuition. It can't explain love. It can't explain feelings. It can't explain emotions. It also can't explain the information that is in our DNA. So you will probably encounter some of that. It will try to explain the problem of evil, and it will do it in such a way as, since evil exists, God can't exist. Well, if God doesn't exist and evil exists, the problem's not God. So don't let that shake your faith in the Lord. Then materialism. So materialism will teach in using logic and human reason that somehow or another we evolved. Well, materialism means that matter evolved into something of a higher order. That just doesn't work. The next thing is moral relativism, that based on situations and circumstances and my subjective feelings and what I want will dictate the morality that I live according to. It removes God from the equation, because mankind is the highest thinker on this earth, and we get to determine moralism. And there's no objective moralism anywhere in the world. The next one is postmodernism. Postmodernism really started coming about in the middle 1930s. And it was a revolt against modernism that evolved into postmodernism. Let me give you an example of what postmodernism is. Let's suppose that we had a picture, a painting of a table with a bowl of fruit, apples, oranges, grapes. You could have 10 people look at that and they'd all say the same thing. But let's talk about postmodern art. You'll have something that looks like an animal with the neck of a giraffe. It'll have a funny face. It'll have 3 eyes. It will have the body of a zebra, but it will have the legs of an elephant. And all 10 people can look at that image and come up with 10 completely opposite explanations, and they're all equally valid, and you are not allowed to tell somebody that their opinion and their position is not valid. That is postmodernism, where we're ultra sensitive about everybody's feelings. That's postmodernism. And then we get into autonomous reason, where we use logic to determine what is right and what is wrong, but it is human logic that we do that. Existentialism. We didn't come from anything. There's no reason for our existence, which means there is no highest objective good outside of what we assign it, and then when we die, we go into nothingness. And then there's the denial of the afterlife. Because if all there is this life, when we die, there is no more. So I say all of that. Why this is important is if you are going to share Christ with somebody, you need to understand where they're coming from. Because let's suppose that you were to open the Bible and you were going to immediately go to John chapter 18, verse 38. It's when Pilate asked Jesus this question, what is truth? The text doesn't tell us that Pilate ever received the answer, and I don't believe that Pilate wanted the answer. So if you were to open the Bible and speak that this is authority with somebody that holds a secular worldview, they're not going to listen to you. Get to know them, understand where they're coming from, build the relationship, and then slowly draw them to the Word of God, understanding where they're coming from. So when you go to philosophy, when you go to sociology, use it to your advantage to further your walk in the Lord as you